Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Richie Thomas, the Soldier's Coach, coming to you with your final marching orders today. So check it. One of my favorite books of all time is The Last Lecture. Absolutely classic, instant classic. The story, the build up. If you haven't read it, I would highly recommend it. Absolutely phenomenal read. Of course, the author, if you don't know, he was a college professor, and typically when college professors get ready to retire, they give what's known as their last lecture, their retirement speech. But in this case, not only was he retiring, but the gentleman had a terminal cancer, so he was like retiring. So he was giving his last lecture on life, and it's a book I refer back to constantly. Have it underlined, notes, the whole nine. Some of my favorite quotes from it. But I was like, man, think about it like this: like if you could write a book or give a speech or teach a class. If you could teach a class on anything that you've learned in life, what would you teach it on, right? Like, what is the top 5 lessons that you've learned, top 10 lessons? Our attention span's short. Let's keep it under 10. You think about what 10 lessons you would learn, the biggest lesson you learned in life and love and business and money and parenting and being a neighbor. What are the biggest lessons that you've learned? Like, what are you qualified to teach on? So I always think about that book all the time, because it's just like, there's so many life lessons. We're constantly getting, hurt and wounded, and we turn wounds. Hopefully we turn wounds into wisdom. We turn that hurt into healing, hopefully, right? And we turn that pain into some form of peace. So what is it that you learn? And I think about that book all the time. So of course, it had me thinking about all my folks getting ready to transition out, whether you've been in the military a year, a day, a week, a month, or whether you've been in 30 years. What are the biggest lessons that you've learned? Like, if you could go back and talk to 25-year-old you, what would you say? What's step 1? What's step 2? What's step 3, 4, and 5? Like, what would be your system? Like, what would you say to yourself to help you heal, to help you get over it? Because I feel like the biggest issue in the military community is unemployment, but I also know that mental illness is huge, and half of my folks suffer from depression, and the other half suffer from anxiety. So we have a fear of the past, we also have a fear of the future, and suicide is just rampant in the military, the veteran community specifically. So I think we are trained for the combat battlefield, but we're not trained for that mental, emotional, and spiritual battlefield. So what would you say to you? What would your last lecture be to you? What have you learned? What have you gotten through? What are your wins? What are your losses? But what would you say to you? That's a heavy one, right? This is, man, that's crazy. I was gonna end it. I had a couple jokes, but now I'm gonna let it ride. All right. So that's your final marching orders today. What would you say to you in your last lecture before you transition out of the military? This is Richie Thomas, the Soldier's Coach, and I will tell you peace out, but the reality is most of y'all need peace in. Thank you.